Hey everyone, this is Toby with the Gypsy Kiss, and this is the first of the AGK Member Vault videos that we're going to produce for you. We plan to produce 2 a month as part that you receive as part of your membership, and we're going to cover topics that I can address in ideally 5 minutes or less, just to give you something to think about and perhaps to start conversations in our meetups, in our Zoom meetups. So again, this is the first one. The topic of this first video is Fenn's certainty of the clues. And I think that was, he put his final imprimatur stamp on that in the most recent interview that he did with the Voice of America. What I wanted to start with is this page, which is a page that I copied from my copy of The Thrill of the Chase. And actually it was my first copy of The Thrill of the Chase. I've bought 2 others since then. And these were the notes that I made on the page on which the poem is printed that helped me get to my first theory or solution by that time, because I did go out and implement the theory to the Rio de los Chamas. And as you can see, and I've actually put a copy of this image in the member vault so that you can take a look at it. And as you can see, without having any prior knowledge about this, this was way back in September of 2013, I had concluded that the first clue was begin at where warm waters halt, and that the last clue ended at your quest to cease. And I literally discounted at that point, I don't now, but I discounted at that point the first stanza and the 5th and 6th stanzas, actually the last 2 sentences of the 4th stanza and the 5th and 6th stanzas. So I wasn't actually that far off based on what we've discovered since then. So let's talk about the first clue. And, excuse me. So I have added to this a PDF file that I copied from Terry Scant, and the search action, the search criteria was first clue. And I've put that PDF file and uploaded it to the member vault so that you can see the entire list of entries for Fenn using the phrase first clue. But I took 2 that I thought were really important, and 2 that I had focused on. And the first was in an interview with New Zealand Radio that took place back in 2013. And I think this was April of 2013. He hadn't launched Too Far to Walk just yet. He didn't do that until later in 2013. And I think he was vulnerable in the sense that he was talking to someone from New Zealand Radio, perhaps imagining, New Zealand Radio, by the way, is their version of the public broadcasting system, or PBS radio. And I don't think he imagined that one day anyone would listen to this, because he's never been so, until recently, he's never been so precise about what to do with contents of the poem. And in that interview, the interviewer asks him a question about what people should do, and he says, the first clue in the poem is begin at where warm waters halt. That's the first clue. And so I think it's important that he repeated that, the first clue in the poem, and then he said, that's the first clue. So that gave me some sense of certainty that you have to believe when the man says the first clue is begin at where warm waters halt. You have to trust that he's making a valid point. Now, the question, of course, after that is, then what do I do with the first stanza? And we're going to talk about that in future videos. That's not for today. What I'm trying to do in today's video is just talk about what I think are the 9 clues in the poem, the sentences that make it, the lines that make up the 9 clues in the poem. Then in Mysterious Writings Response on Jenny Kyle's website, and again, this is in that PDF file that I've added to this entry, he said you should start, in response to a question, you should start with the first clue, and we now know that the first clue is begin at where warm waters halt, and then solve the other 8 in order. Meaning you go down the line of clues. So the question is, how far down do you go, and what does he mean by order? I think one has to assume that he means by in order, he means the clues that follow, right? So the question is, well, then what are the clues that follow? And we didn't have anything precise until recently. And what happened recently is Fenn did an interview with the Voice of America, with a journalist from the Voice of America. The Voice of America is actually a government entity. It is a branch of the USIA, the U.S. Information Agency. And the Voice of America is responsible for transmitting and I'm going to use this in quotes, American propaganda to other countries. And the reason I'm so familiar with it is that my uncle, Edmundo, was with the Voice of America for a good part of his career, and he was with the Cuban branch. He used to work in Miami, Florida, and he spoke literally perfect Spanish. And he used to broadcast American propaganda down to Cuba back in the 60s. So that's how I'm very aware of what the Voice of America does. And interestingly, part of my career desires in journalism was one day to be an employee, a journalist with the Voice of America. I never headed that direction, but that was kind of a plan. Anyway, in this interview that took place in September of 2019, I don't have the exact date, but the interview is on Dale Neitzel's site, and I put a link to that interview. It's in 4 parts. Dale broke it up into 4 about 7.5 minute sections, and this comes from part 3, and it's at the 40-second mark, and Fenn says, after being asked a question, quote, "You have to go back to the poem. You have to find out where the first clue is, where warm waters halt." So he repeats what we already have learned in other things that he said. That's the first clue. Repeats it again. That's the first clue. And then take it from there. The clues are chronological after that. Now, I look at chronological in the context of that sentence, and it doesn't make any sense to me. He might have meant consecutive, et cetera, et cetera. I guess there's a way to look at it chronologically, but chronological is a measure of time, not of space, right? After that, one leads to another, then to another, and when you get to the 9th clue, look down, because you're where the treasure is. And as we know, the poem in that stanza has a phrase that says, "If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease." And he says, and when you get to the 9th clue, look down, because you're where the treasure is. The implication of that is that we know that the first clue is begin at where warm waters halt. And the 9th clue is if you've been wise and found the blaze, and that the clues are consecutive in order after that. So that, I think, solidifies the idea that the 9 clues are the lines that begin at where and end with found the blaze. So the question is, what do we do with the first stanza, the second half of the 4th stanza, and all of the 5th and 6th stanzas? And I think that's a topic for another video. If you don't agree, make sure you comment, send us an email, etc. Let us know what you think the 9 clues in the poem are so that we can have discussions over that. And the other thing that I'd like you to do, please, if you have ideas for these short videos that you'd like to see us address, and we'd like to keep them short, we don't want to go on for hours with these things, but if you see other ideas that you'd like us to address in these short videos, please send an email with a subject line short MV for Member Vault video topic, and then tell me in that email what topic you'd like us to address. And our email address, of course, is at gypsykiss@gmail.com. So thanks very much for listening. I look forward to doing more of these, and I hope you enjoy them. And let me know how you feel about this one.